am so excited for today's conversation. Today, I have Pascal Cook Fernandez. She is an intuitive coach dedicated to supporting women entrepreneurs to achieve energetic alignment and tap into their inner guidance and intuition. Woo, can't wait to talk about all that. She empowers women to share their unique gifts with the world by turning their PhD in life into their superpower. As the owner and CEO of Women Finding Clarity, Pascal empowers women to align with their mission by staying energetically attuned and connected to their intuition. She believes in the power of holistic well-being and integrates spiritual insights and practical coaching methods to facilitate profound personal and professional transformations. Her own journey, which includes her coaching certification, Reiki Master certification, being a podcast host, a degree in teaching, a 23-year and counting marriage, and being a mom to 3 amazing young adults, enriches her ability to connect with, support, and empower women. On her podcast, Women Finding Clarity, Pascal features women who have harnessed their life lessons and inner wisdom to create successful and impactful businesses. Her mission is to help women align, elevate, and thrive together, one conversation at a time. Woohoo! Thank you so much for being here. I'm excited to have you today.
So excited to be here. Thank you
Yes.
for having me.
Oh gosh, we have so much alignment in what we do to support our clients. I'm gonna probably have to watch the timer because I feel like this could be one of the longer podcasts that I've recorded.
Yes.
So just share with the listeners a little bit about your story and how you got to where you're at.
Yeah. So, really, the condensed version is I grew up in an entrepreneur realm, right? My parents were entrepreneurs. So fast forward lots of years, I became a massage therapist, had a brick and mortar, loved it. I added so many things to my business, including energy healing and teaching mindfulness and meditation, all the things. But I didn't really know what it took to run a successful business. And so one of my big hurdles was no boundaries. And so right, you're
Yeah,
laughing because
yeah.
that's no fun. I ended up closing that business because I didn't have firm boundaries around my time and I didn't want to miss anything with my kids. And so, fast forward, I learned so much along the way. And now I help other women entrepreneurs really structure their time, their business, their lives so they can have all they want to have and do all they want to do and be successful.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, boundaries is one of those things, and I think when we have our phone and we're so addicted to our phone, and addicted is probably a strong word for some people listening, but we always have it with us,
I
typically,
was
right?
just going to
When I
say,
record, I put it in the other room, right?
so
But
beautiful.
one of the things that I've had to learn to do is if a client texts me at night, I can respond because I'm sitting on my phone, but I choose not to. Right. And that takes practice. And then I'm like, but then I'll have to do it tomorrow. And I have to remember that they sent me. But, and I get to decide. And sometimes I will if it's quick. But there have been many times where I thought, you don't need to. Because if I do respond at 10 o'clock at night, then I'm setting an expectation that if they,
Yeah,
message me at other times, I'm going to respond.
absolutely. And if you're the person who wants to respond at 10 o'clock at night or 2 o'clock in the morning, amen and hallelujah to you. But you do have to set those parameters for yourself
Right.
because it's not just about that, like you said, that one text message. And you're setting yourself up, you're creating a container and the structure that you want to have moving forward.
Right. I'm a hairdresser for that, and I think other people, I think that, and
Yep.
people listening may or may not. And I don't work as much now, but I used to work every Thursday night. Now it's a little bit less. But if somebody wants to come in on a Tuesday, I'm like, sorry, I work on Thursdays. And if I choose to do it, I will, but if I accommodated everybody else's schedule, I'd be working 7 days a week. But
Yeah.
if you want an appointment with me, I work on Thursdays.
The reality is you set what works for you, and the people who are supposed to be your people will work around whatever works for you because they know you're in resonance and
Right.
they know you're the person for me. So I'm going to make it happen.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. So, let's talk a little bit about intuition, right? How do you help your clients tap into that? And I think we both are very in alignment with teaching that to our clients. Like I know myself, a lot of the women that I work with spend most of their time in their head. And now I teach them, there's something below that neck. Pay
And that
attention to that.
pay attention to that, right? The mind is important, but the mind isn't the only thing. And I dare say, not the most important.
And often it lies to us.
So often,
Well,
right?
I say 100% of the time it lies to us.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. It's the mind doesn't have a mind, right? And so the mind is literally a recording device. And so everything it's telling us is what is being input into it.
Yeah,
And so that's why it's so important to surround yourself with the people and the things that you want to input, because whatever you input is what it's going to feed back to you, right?
100. I just had a conversation with a client earlier, and she's trying to make a decision. And when we were breaking down her thoughts around it, she realized they weren't her thoughts. They were the thoughts of everyone else and what people were telling her. Right. So now let's get clear on what do you want?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why intuition is so important, right?
Yeah.
And so for me, the way that I start out working with every client is a little bit of energy education. Let's talk about it. Let's talk about the neuroscience of it. Let's talk about the physics of energy a little bit. I'm not a physicist. I don't play one on TV. I don't pretend, but I will tell you just enough so you can kind of grasp what it all means and how it relates to you and your business, right? And then we go into who we are innately as a person. And so for me, yourself is the self with a capital S. So it's almost like, okay, this person that you see in the mirror is Francine, but then there's a little Francine who's inside of this
Yeah.
Francine. And that's your true self with a capital S. That's your true essence. For me, that's a soul. Other people call it other things, but it's
Sure.
tapping into and getting to know that little Francine inside and then leading from the little Francine.
Hmm. And when you're saying little Francine, you're not talking inner child, you're talking soul. Or
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's a really great distinction. Thank
Yeah,
you
because
for
when I talk about little Francine with my clients, oftentimes we're doing some inner child work. So I just
you're
wanted to
talking
make clear.
about little
Yes,
tiny
yeah,
Francine. Yeah.
yeah.
And so this is the first time I've ever said it that way, right?
Okay,
Um,
interesting.
it is interesting. And I don't
Yeah.
know why I said it that way. I never
Mm,
have before. For me, I always picture it as like a little universe inside of us,
beautiful.
because
I
I
love
feel
that.
like that's what the
Yeah.
soul is. It's just
Oh,
a little touch of God, a little touch of universe, a little touch of all that is.
right. I love
Yeah.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
And we all have it, right? And so often we're looking externally for God, right? And it is for anything, for answers, right? Well, let me go ask this person what I should do. Let me go, and really all of it is inside of us,
All the answers are within. All you
right?
have to do, and I say, quote, all you have to do, because it's not easy, is it?
Not at all.
It's
No,
really difficult sometimes. Sometimes it's really fun,
right?
right? When you have someone like you to work with who knows how to make it fun. Because let's be honest, where there's joy, there's creation and innovation.
Yeah,
And that's why the fun is so important.
100%. I did a podcast episode a couple of weeks ago. It aired on the importance of play. right? And the neuroscience around why it's important in adults. And this woman, Angel, she actually works with organizations. And the CEO and the frontline call center person are on the same team doing the same, right? Like, but having fun doing it. Like, we forget when we become adults to have fun.
Yeah.
And it's so important. I know one of the things that is important to you is like teaching people that life doesn't have to be as hard as we make it, right? Why do you think and I love talking to other coaches who do the same thing. Like I already know some of the answers for myself, but like I
Right,
love
right,
to hear
right.
it from other people. But why do you think we make it so damn hard?
We make it so hard because of something you've already said is we listen to everyone else first of all, right? And that's why it's so important to get to know that true self with a capital S inside of us, because when we know her, when we know him, we don't have to rely on other people's opinions as much or other people's guidance. So that's a really big thing first of all. Second of all, let's talk about the way we were brought up and our life's PhD, all the lessons that we have, all the experiences that we've been through, we carry those with us. And so if we were always told that we're lazy, how is that going to show up in our lives, right? It's going to show up as your brain has a little mechanism in it that says, oh, you're looking for a white car? There's one, there's one, there's one, there's one, right? Oh, you're looking for evidence that you're lazy? I'm going to make motivation so hard for you because I'm going to prove to you that, in fact, you're lazy. And so we make life so much more difficult than it needs to be by overthinking, by relying on other people to tell us who we are and what we should, I don't like that word, what we should be doing instead of reflecting and going within,
Yeah.
leaning into our joy.
Yeah, I was telling Pascal before we started that I've been recording multiple ones, and I had this conversation yesterday about shoulding all over yourself, right? In one of the episodes, right? The words should and need should just be taken out of the English language,
Yeah.
because when you're shoulding or needing, it's coming from a place of lack, right? Or judgment. And want and choice has so much more power,
Yes, I
right? And
agree.
words
I
are
don't,
spells,
words are spells. I don't like should. I don't like have to.
right? Have to, need, yeah, all of it,
Yeah,
right?
all of it.
Because what it's saying is I'm wrong for not,
Hmm.
right? And that just isn't, I don't like that at all. And
You know,
you were talking a little bit about you know, kind of proving you're lazy, right? And seeing it, that like that's also manifestation, right? So I'm so lazy, I'm so lazy, I'm so lazy. Let's prove to you how lazy you are, and let me just keep showing this up for you.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I'm all about manifestation, and all of it starts with what we're inputting,
Right.
what we believe, what we think. And so it just goes back to the thinking is what we're inputting. The beliefs, where do your beliefs come from? They come from who you were born in, what family you were born into, and those generational beliefs. They come from society and what you're witnessing and intaking from society, how you have to belong. They come from your friendships, right? Do you want to fit in? Do you want to be like so and so? And I think it's easy to just want to fit in. We all want to fit in. We
Of
all want to be
course. Yeah.
accepted, but it's a really fine line between fitting in and keeping up with the Joneses, fitting in and wearing a mask. And that
Mm.
can be a very slippery slope.
Yeah. And I think what's important about manifestation too is manifestation. I listened to this program a while ago. I don't know if you're familiar with Sonia Riccati. She works on money manifestation. And one of the things that was powerful when I was listening to it, she said, and I'm going to paraphrase her, of course, but in this moment, you have no debt. In this moment, you have no whatever, fill in the blank.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, it hit me like a ton. Like, it's stuff you know, but you know how when you hear it differently, because in that moment, the only thing that was true was I was in my car listening to her audio. Nothing else existed. And bringing yourself into the present is really how you manifest. Because when we're talking about what we don't have or what we want in the future, we're already in the lack of.
That's
But
right.
in this moment, I have everything that I need. And if I can be that energy, if I have everything I need, then it's true.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And the reality is, I, I'm a huge Eckhart Tolle fan. I think
Mm-hmm.
that I've sung his name from the mountaintops, right? Because I just adore him so much. But the reality is, something that he says is that all we have is this present moment. And if you really think about it, what we're learning in science is that time truly is not linear. That's just a dimension that we happen to be living on in this moment. And I know that can sound a little woo. It can
Right.
sound a little cuckoo to some people, but that's science too. And so, no matter time, the past doesn't exist because you physically cannot get back there. And the future doesn't exist because it could be a bazillion different things. The only thing that actually exists is this moment right now. And in your next breath, that's the only moment that exists.
Right.
And so I love that you pointed that out, that in that moment, you were just driving in your car and that's
Right.
all you had, and all was right with the world in that moment.
Right. And I think it's so easy and yet so hard to actually, right? To live. But it's a practice. I say to my clients, and I'm sure you do as well, it's all just a practice.
Yep.
Right? It's all just a practice, right? None of
It's
us, I mean, I know you've been doing this work probably as long as I have, right? I still have shit that comes up for me. And now it comes up even deeper and bigger and right? And it's all just information. There's no right or wrong. I remember having a conversation with a client, I don't know, about a year ago. She had this really big aha breakthrough. And she was like, so now what do I do? I was like, nothing, just live your life. Right? Like great information. There's really nothing you need to do, but now you have more tools and information. So the next time this shows up, you can choose differently.
Yes. So beautifully said, because we feel like we have to have it all figured out, right? When, let's say, you're feeling lack because you had an unexpected bill come in that you didn't budget for. It's so easy to get on the runaway train of lack, of fear, of how am I going to do this?
Victim,
A
victim.
victim.
Why does this keep happening to me? Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. And what's important is that we realize that that's our brain. That's our amygdala that's trying to keep us safe, that's saying, oh, the house is on fire. You have to get out. The house is not on fire. And I'll tell you something. This isn't necessarily fun, but it's so very true. You can feel like your whole world is on fire. But if you get a medical diagnosis, or if someone you love gets a terminal medical diagnosis, nothing else in the world matters.
Matters. Yeah.
Nothing. And so sometimes, as maybe, I don't know, off as it sounds to think, when you find yourself jumping on that runaway train, think, is somebody about to die?
Right.
No. So does it really matter? I mean, it matters in that I don't want the lights to be shut off, but at the same time, I'll figure it out.
Yeah. I had an experience a couple of years ago where and for those of you listening, this may or may not have ever happened to you. My primary care felt a lump in my breast. I was fairly confident I didn't have anything, but my sister did have breast cancer about 6 years ago. So she wanted me to go. So if you're a woman and you've ever gone through this, you go for the mammogram and then the ultrasound and then the thing, right? So when I got there, I had a little nerves just because you do. But again, I truly felt I was going to be okay. So I went for the mammogram. Then they move you to another room or waiting room where I had to have the ultrasound. Then they moved me to a chair that was literally outside the room we were in when my sister got diagnosed a couple of years before. And I sat in that chair and found myself trying to figure out how I was going to fit radiation into my schedule. I started planning. I was like, well, I guess I would go in the morning, and how would that affect my client? Right. And all of a sudden I caught myself and I said, what are you doing? Because in that moment, I didn't have a diagnosis. I did
Yeah.
not have cancer in that moment. Thank God I never had it. But in that moment, I was planning for it.
Yeah.
And this was probably 2 or 3 years ago. And developed a mantra of right here, right now, I'm okay. Right here, right now, I'm fine. Because in that moment, that was true. Now, it all could have changed when the nurse walked in, right? But thankfully it didn't. But in that moment, me planning for that was what was keeping me out of the present moment. So I sat there. I mean, I had a lot of anxiety waiting for that nurse to walk in. And I just sat there, got myself quiet, and just said to myself, right here, right now, you're okay. Right here, right now, you're fine. And that has really, my clients, I love it when my clients repeat it back to me now, right? Because that truly has been a mantra, because that is true, right? You're fine.
You're fine.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I love, as horrible as that experience was for you in
Right.
that moment, I love very much that you were able to catch yourself and say, wait a minute, what am I doing? But the reason you were able to do that is because it's a practice, and you practice pulling yourself back into alignment. You practice pulling yourself back into the present moment. And I will say, in any kind of manifestation, the important thing to do, I would say in life, the important thing to do is practice when it doesn't feel like the house is on fire.
100%, right? It's so much harder when you're in it,
Yeah,
right? Than when you're on the other side of it. And I think that's for all of us, right? Like myself, as
absolutely.
like I would say the same thing. Like I am really good at getting into victim and poor me at times. And then when I'm on the other side of it, I'm like, well, that was a beautiful lesson to learn and all the beautiful things. But when you're in it, it feels pretty crappy.
It's pretty crappy. I just this year went through a very similar experience and ended up having surgery and having a place removed. Right. And so as you were telling that story, I'm like, oh, I know the fear. I
Yeah,
know that's why it's more important than ever, because at some point in all of our lives, metaphorically, the house will be on fire. And
right.
so, how do you want to show up in those moments? Right? You want to show up in alignment and in with the capacity to continue over and over again to pull yourself back into alignment, because it's going to be necessary.
I had this conversation yesterday, and it's just intuitively the question is coming in to ask you, what do you think stops people from wanting to do this type of work? What stops people from maybe wanting, and what makes people want to make it hard for themselves?
Yeah, such a good question. As you're asking that, the first thing that's coming to mind, and I don't know why, maybe because we're talking about things that some people might consider a little on the woo side, religion is the first thing that popped into my
Ah,
head as you said that. And I
interesting.
don't talk about religion often.
Yeah.
And I don't care what religion people are or if they're a religion at all and all of that. But I think the reason that popped into my mind is because as people, we want structure. We want to know that we're okay. And how
Mm,
can I know I'm okay? by following the path, by doing what I'm told, by knowing what is the next step at all,
Control by control.
by control,
Hi, my
right?
name is Francine. I'm a control freak in recovery.
Yes, yes, right? No, I've never been told that I'm controlling.
Right?
Yes, I might have.
Yeah.
So yes, I think being controlled and being okay, here's one. I saw a meme. It wasn't a meme, it was like a video of memes, like a carousel. And it was like jail and school. And it showed the bus for the corrections and the school bus. And then it showed the school cafeteria and the prison
The
cafeteria.
long tables. Yep.
Yep. And then it showed the row of cells in the prison. And then next to it, it showed the row of lockers in the school hallway, right? And so we become indoctrinated
Yeah.
to stay within the lines. And I think some of this is really thinking outside of the box
Right.
and really coming to terms with, wait a minute, wait a minute. There is something else outside of this box.
Mm.
And so I think it can be difficult to step out of the box.
Wow, that's beautiful. And that what, yeah, I think that's yes. And what I would add is fear of the unknown,
Absolutely.
right? And then the willingness to trust and surrender.
And the effort that it takes.
It takes a lot of fucking effort.
You have to be willing before anything's going to happen.
Right. Yeah.
And so you have to be willing to get off the couch and put down your phone.
Yeah.
Then you have to be willing to have a beginner's mind and think differently or seek out someone who thinks differently, who you feel in resonance with. And then
Yeah.
you have to be willing to do the quote unquote work to learn about it. And then the work to put it into practice. And then the work, you know what I mean? So it's the being willing to be willing to be willing. It's the runway to actually be able
Right.
to take off can sometimes feel daunting.
Well, and I think too, this work isn't about pointing the finger externally, right? Because when we do one out, four coming back, right? You
Yeah.
have to really be willing to own your shit, your life. You have to own that nothing has ever happened to you. It's all happened for you, and you actually create your own reality. And that can be a hard pill to swallow, that you actually have to take responsibility for your life. Because it's a lot easier to blame everybody else for what goes on in your life.
Here's a great example of that. I was involved with, we'll say, a group recently, and it didn't go the way I wanted it to go. And for lack of better words, I kind of left feeling pissed off and pretty crappy, right? And it took a big hit on my
Mm,
heart, on my ego, on my mind, all the things. And it literally took me months to unravel all of that and to say, wait a minute, I can't just cast blame. How did I show up in that situation? How could I have been in that group, in that situation differently?
right,
So I had a different outcome, right? And it's not letting people off the hook. It's saying, what is my part in all of this?
right,
Because I firmly believe there's three sides to every story. There's his, hers, and the truth.
right.
The truth lies somewhere in the middle and has a sprinkling of all the
But
versions mixed in.
And I often believe that I'm going to go back to some inner child stuff too. I believe that nothing shows up for us that isn't a reflection of us, whether it's a reflection of today or little Francine, right? I often talk about this woman that I used to work for, who dismissed people like she was nasty, and it triggered the shit out of me every time. And I knew that there was a reflection of me, but I was really clear that I did not treat people like that. So I was driving home one day, and I call what I had was like a spiritual sucker punch, right? I'm driving and I'm like, what is this? What is this in me? And what it was I dismiss me. And she was, I was that person where, oh, I love your coat, Francine. Yeah, but it doesn't have pockets. Oh, did you lose weight? No, I didn't. I actually think I gained 5 pounds. It's just this shirt, right? Like I was the yeah, but right now I do a workshop on receiving, and I just say thank you, right? Like just start, but I dismissed me.
Yeah.
And what was beautiful was once I realized that was the lesson, the energy was no longer there with the woman. The next time I saw her, we were like buddy buddies. And I truly believe that, that group there, whatever it was for you, if you don't clear it, it's just going to show up again, bigger, louder, more
In
intense.
all areas of your life
Right.
too, right? It's
Right.
just, it's again, oh, you want to see a white car? There's one, there's one, there's one, there's one. The
Right.
more you focus on the negativity, the more negativity is going to
Going
show
to
up.
show up.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely. That is
Yeah.
such a beautiful example. And thank you for sharing that
Yeah.
because it's so true. And you called it a spiritual, I think you said gut
Sucker
punch,
punch.
sucker punch. I call that a spiritual awakening.
Yep. This one was a little bit more of an away. This really, I was like, oh.
Ugh. Yeah, it can. We all have this idea, I think, especially when you're first starting out of being curious, like
Yeah.
spiritual curious or woo curious. We all have this idea that a spiritual awakening is like, and there's a
Angels
golden
sing,
light
you
that
feel the
comes
feathers
down on
on your
me.
face.
It's not. Let me tell you what a spiritual awakening is. A spiritual awakening is tears and snot and heavy, like I've lost my breath because I just got a gut punch
Right.
and laying in bed and, thinking about it and saying, how does this relate to my life? Sometimes it's joyful. Sometimes it's like you're skipping down the street and the sun is shining on you, but not always.
Right.
And so that's important to know. And it's important to know that every person has spiritual awakenings throughout their life because we're always stepping up, we're
And
always
they don't
elevating.
always pay attention to them.
Absolutely.
Yeah. They may have, we all have them. It
Yes,
just goes to your level of conscious awareness as to whether
that's
or
right.
not you pay attention to them, right? I used to be a professional matchmaker and a date and relationship coach. And I used to love it when people would talk to me about, all the people that they dated and it was the same person over and over. And I used to think, so at what point are you going to realize what the common denominator is here? Not
Yes.
all men are X or all women are X, right? If you're the common denominator, start
Yeah.
doing your work so you can now shift that energy.
Yeah. And I feel like we could definitely just dive headfirst in a rabbit hole about that, couldn't
Oh,
we?
yeah.
About who you're attracting into your life
Right.
and what is that feeding inside of you?
Well, even friendships, I will speak to myself. I have had girlfriends just disappear over like long-term
Oh, yeah.
friendships. And I'm like, what actually just happened? And I look at, did I do something? And I know energetically we're in different places, but there was still close friendships. But what has been beautiful is it has allowed for me to attract new people that have have the conversations that I want to have with people, right? Where those other relationships were beautiful because they were part of my life for so long, but I wasn't having these deep woo, right? I wasn't having this conversation,
That's
right?
right.
And now I'm inviting other women in. There's still some grief and sadness over the loss of those relationships, but I'm attracting in women that I can have these fun, deep conversations with.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's just so beautiful. And it's so when if we all stop and reflect back, that's the truth, I think, for all of us. There's only a handful of people who probably stay. I mean, in percentages, there's only a handful of people who really stay with only the core group that they started out with. Do they end with, right?
Right.
And it is because all of our energy is shifting up, down, and every which way. Um, a truth no matter what you believe, is that nature abhors a vacuum. And so when one thing empties out, something else immediately fills that space. And so, what is it that you want to fill that space? And you have to be intentional,
Yeah.
right? So, if one friend leaves, who do I want to fill that space? Do I go to the bar and make a new friend? Not that I'm against having a cocktail or two,
Right.
because I'm all about a Cape Codder, let me tell you. But do I want to go to a bar and make a friend?
Right.
Or do I want to make a friend in a community who's having a conversation that's going to support and uplift me?
Right.
Because I'm in a place in my life, that's the friend I want to make.
100%. 100%. I love that. I know your freebie, and we're gonna put this all in the show notes, is the 7 chakras of feminine business. So I want to talk a little bit about that. Tell me, what are the 7 chakras of feminine business?
So, your 7 chakras of feminine business are exactly what's on the wall behind you. It's your
Right.
7 major chakras
Yeah.
coming up through your body, your 7 major energy centers. But as a Reiki master, as an energy healer, I know that energy really is just, it infiltrates and is everything. Like, this pen is made up of energy, right? This candle is made up of energy. The difference between those two things is the way that the atoms come together, right? And so, why aren't our businesses also made up of energy? Why would we not business build from an energetic
Mm,
perspective? So, when I work with my clients, the first thing we talk about is Energy 101. The second thing we talk about are your chakras and what each chakra means and how each chakra relates to your life and your body. And then we move into how every chakra relates to a part of your business and how you run your business. So it's the physical building of it, and it's the energetics that you're bringing into your business.
I love
So
that.
let me give you an example. If you now are having trouble with your marketing, if you're just starting out marketing, or you're like, I need to rebrand, something isn't working here, what energy center do you feel like you would kind of dig into?
Oh, so the first one that came to mind is my sixth, because to me, I mean, second would be creation, but to me, marketing is also the vision of, right? When you
Yes.
said rebranding, it feels like the sixth, because like, what am I seeing?
I love it. I love
Yeah.
it so much. So it is a yes and, because my vision, what am I seeing? What do I want? When that's not clear, where do we need to go? We need to go down into our sacral,
Yeah.
right? First, let's go into your root. What's working? Are my foundations secure? Da, 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 da. Then let's go into the sacral. Let's be creative. Let's have some fun. Like a previous podcast guest that you had, let's play,
Right.
right? Because when you're in play, that is where you're in creation. Think about a child. A child
Yes.
doesn't think about, I got to get this figured out so I can start making money.
Right.
You put art materials down in front of a child, they're going to be creative and they're going to come up with something that maybe you never thought of before in your life. And the same thing happens when you allow yourself to play, to create, to be in nature. You're going to have downloads. You're going to innovate in a way that maybe you never did before, and that's going to feed your clear seeing.
Yeah, I love that. So how do you help clients, if their chakras are blocked, or, whatever? Is Reiki the only modality you use, or do you have other energy healing modalities? And do you do healing work with your clients?
I do some healing work with my clients. And so, such a good question, because I think when we talk about energy and healing and all of it, it can be nebulous, right? And so, maybe a session might look like, okay, let's talk about, um, you know, marketing and the key things that are important, the really black and white structural things. And then, okay, we know here are some guidelines. Let's do a meditation, and I'll lead them in a meditation, whether it's in their third eye chakra or it's a meditation for their sacral chakra. And then when that's over, let's talk about, what did you see in that meditation? What did you feel in that meditation? Right. And it gets so much more into it, but this is really kind of a first shovel of digging
Sure.
into, what does it really look like?
Yeah.
Because I think that the way I do it is so different than the way most people help people build their businesses.
Yeah.
The reason I think it's important, again, not only is it because everything's made up of energy, but we're all so different. And so I could have 50 people in front of me on, say, a Zoom screen. I lead them through exactly the same sacral chakra meditation, and every one of them will have seen, felt, or heard something different.
100. And, I also, one of the modalities I use is Reiki. I could do a healing on somebody and you could do a healing on somebody, and they're going to have two different, very different experiences because of our energy as well, because we're the ones holding space and we're going to bring different things to it. So I love it.
Absolutely. And I recommend crystals that they could
Yeah.
use. And I recommend books that they could read. And I recommend podcasts. And, so it's such an integration
Yeah.
of the physical, the business, the black and white,
Yeah.
and the spiritual, metaphysical. And I think bringing them together has been like the missing link.
100%. When I share with people what I do, I call myself a spiritual mindset coach, a teacher, a guide, an EFT practitioner, an energy healer, because I love coaching. I've been a coach for 11 years. But the energy piece, when I started really bringing that in, it really shifted things, because we can only get so far through talk coaching. And a lot, I'm an EFT practitioner, and bringing that into my practice has really been a game changer, because it really taps into that subconscious. I can be having a conversation with somebody, but if they're tapping while they're doing it, they have such a different outcome.
Yeah,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah.
That is something that I want to get trained in. So maybe you and I need to have a conversation about that,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
because I've experienced it and it makes such a difference.
100%. It
Yeah.
really, I have been a practitioner for about a year now, and I've been experienced with it for years myself as a client, and just seeing some of the shifts that my clients have made in such a short period of time using the tool, because our brain is going to protect us. I think we talked about that earlier. It's there to keep us safe. So it can't sometimes get to that next layer, that next level, so that you can do the clearing, so that you can have the awareness,
That's
right?
right.
Even myself, personally, I'll share an example just so you understand the power of it. I was talking to my practitioner last year about money, right? I get money in, I spend it, then I feel guilty that I spent it, and then I don't have money again, and then I get right. I'm like, I'm so over this. I can see the cycle. I've been living it my whole life. And when we were tapping, I like literally stopped dead in my tracks. And she was like, what? I was like, I need a minute. And she said, what just came up? I'm like, no, I actually need a minute to just process this. And what came up for me was, my mom died when she was 48. She died in 1991. So I've lived longer than my mother, only by a few years, of course.
Sure.
Um, but what happened was, because one of the things, we were tapping on the guilt, because I said I feel guilty when I spend. And it isn't that I feel guilty now, it's that I feel guilty that I actually can spend and my mother can't. That is not something my conscious, but like, I've always known I've outlived my mom, but that was like, what the actual effing, right?
Wow.
That is the subconscious. That is
That
the
just took my breath. Like,
right. I mean,
you
when I
saw,
tell you,
I just had to sit back in my chair because
that's
that took my
exactly what
breath away.
happened to me in that session. I was like, oh, she was like, what happened? I'm like, I need a minute. Like, even now I've got goosebumps as I'm saying it. So, and what happens is, because that is so in there, I was perpetuating the cycle,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because that's what's comfortable,
Yep.
right? But now I have this awareness where I'm like, okay, I don't have to feel guilty if I spend this money. It's a choice,
Right.
right? And more will come.
You know what I
right?
love so much about that is this is how I think about it. When we're trying to unravel those things or figure those things out, we can go around and around in circles. And when you started talking about it, I'm picturing this like downward spiral because
Yeah,
we've all been there, no matter what it's about,
100%.
right?
Yep.
And we ruminate and it's hard to get out of the cyclone of the tornado. And what happens, the way I picture it is there's us, and then there is our parasympathetic nervous system, and then there's our nervous system, right? And so we have to have kind of a workaround to dig into that subconscious to say,
Right,
okay, I'm on fire. And how do I get in the back door to put the fire out? Because if all you're doing is standing at the front of the house looking at the fire, there's no entryway. So
right.
the EFT or hypnosis or meditation, all of those modalities are useful.
Yeah,
And what they do is they bring us in through the back door
right.
because it's not our present mind that
Yeah,
is thinking about it. Oh, so
100%.
good.
Yeah, it
So
really,
good.
it's such a beautiful tool. I love it.
And
So, go
you
ahead.
sharing that experience with all of us is so important because it's not learn from my mistakes, but that kind of a thing. Like you sharing that helps me because I can look at that and say, huh, when I feel this way, how does that relate to
Right.
what I might be feeling? And that might help me have a faster shift. Right.
Yeah,
And so thank you for sharing that. And I think that is exactly the reason that podcasts are important, coaching is important, conversations are important.
100%. Part of my style in coaching is um teaching, right? And sharing of myself. Sometimes I think I might overshare, but to me, and I think for me, I was a woman who lived in her head. I still do. I've learned to live in my body. And I remember when I started my journey 15 years ago in healing work and coaching, I didn't understand what people were talking at the word that's coming is esoteric. And I
Yes.
was logical
Yeah.
and I couldn't connect the dots. Right. And people, I think teachers thought I was being resistant to the work, but honestly, I didn't understand the questions. When people said to me 15 years ago, how do you feel? I didn't know what the fuck that meant.
Right.
Right. Like, I'm fine. I've always been fine. My job is to take care of everyone else.
How should I
So,
feel?
right. So I think when knowing the client, the women that I work with, and I don't want them to struggle in understanding what a feeling like I will give them examples of, hey, well, this happened to me, and they go, oh, okay, this is, this. There are
You
times
want to
I'll be
hear
right.
a fun story that kind of relates?
Yeah.
I've never put it together this way. This is why conversation is so important. Is I have taken mediumship training and I love it. At one point I was like, I think I want to do platform mediumship, like up on a stage, calling on people, all the
Yeah.
things. Love it so much, but I can take a photo that someone sends me and I can do a reading from a photo of their deceased loved one. Like I
Yeah.
can connect with them that way. So a woman sent me a photo once, and I sat and did my whole thing and got ready for it and started doing the reading. And one of the phrases that came into my mind as I'm writing was son of Sam. Son of Sam, if you don't know, was a serial killer, right? And I'm like, immediately, I felt a little fear.
Yeah.
And then I felt doubt like, I can't say this to them. That's not right. Who wants to hear about a serial killer when they're trying to connect with their deceased loved one? And intuitively, I knew I needed to tell them for some
Right.
reason. Right. And so I got on a phone call with her and I told her, and I'm like, listen, this is going to sound insane. And I'm sorry if this doesn't land, but I know I have to, I have to say this to you. I heard Son of Sam. And she started laughing and she's like, oh my gosh. Wait, before I tell you that answer, part of the form of mediumship that I was trained in is evidential mediumship.
Yeah.
So it's not just, oh, they are always with you. They want you to know they love you so much.
Right, right.
So one of the questions I ask is, give me some evidence.
Yeah.
Give me something that I can say to them so they're going to say, you connected with that person. There's no way you could have known.
Right.
So I say this to her, and then I kind of hold my breath. She laughs and she says, that's actually the town that he grew up in, was the same town that the son of Sam was
Oh
from.
my
And I was
God.
like, okay, so it was just a piece of evidence. It doesn't mean anything like horrible where my brain took me, right?
Right.
And so the reason that I'm saying that is that it's so important when we're talking to our clients, like you said, that you share pieces of your own life and you relate your stories, because that's how we help people connect the dots. That's
Yes.
how we help people understand the question by giving them a different explanation.
Yes. And can I just add to that story? That is such a beautiful story of trusting your intuition.
Yeah.
I sat in a mediumship circle. I've done it a couple of times, but the first one was, gosh, probably 8 years. It was a long time ago. And I had suggested it to a friend who is a medium. And she said, well, do you want to come with me? And I said, well, I'm not a medium, right? Now, I know we all have this, but that wasn't something I was practicing. But
Yeah.
the woman running it was somebody I went to high school with. So I reached out and I was like, hey, my friend wants me to come to this, but I'm not a medium. And she said, no, everyone, it's for everyone, blah, blah, blah. So I do. And part of the practice I was doing at the time was trusting, like my intuitive guidance is just a knowing, which makes it really hard. Is it judgment or is it my intuition?
Right.
So I'm in circle and I get a horse and a barn, and my brain goes, are you freaking kidding me right now? Like, are you really kidding me right now? But I was like, nope. So the woman sitting across me, I was like, I have a horse and a barn. And she was like, yes, yes. And I was like, I'm the horse whisperer. But it really was such a beautiful lesson in, I went into immediate judgment.
Right.
My
And
brain
where
was
does
like,
that come from?
right.
Your
Yeah.
brain.
Yeah. So it really is such a beautiful, like that you allowed yourself to actually say that and not interpret it and go,
Right.
this sounds stupid. What am I going to say? Right. So thank you
Yeah,
for sharing that.
absolutely.
So I knew we were going to go long. So what is something you live by that you want to share with our listeners?
Hmm. The thing that I feel like I live by no matter what is to lead with kindness,
Mm,
because it's in that space and of kindness, no matter where you are in the world and what you're up against. That's where you're going to find answers, support, kindness.
I love that.
It's not always easy. It's
No.
sometimes
Yeah.
really difficult, and it's always important.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Oh my gosh. Okay. So I always end by pulling three. Well, I start by pulling three cards, end with letting everyone choose their card. So I have three cards. I have a left, I have a center, and a right. So I'm going to let you choose first.
Is it your left?
Yep. So this is my, if you open your eyes, I'll show, this is left, this is right, this is center.
Okay, so I'm gonna go. I'm going left.
All right. Wow, this came up the other day. So it's the Stargate of Lyra. Expand your causal chakra. Enter the unicorn kingdom. And I just love, like, look at how open that is to source, right? These are the unicorn Magic of Unicorn by Diana Cooper cards. So that's the left card. The
Beautiful.
center card is Ascension Lift. Prepare for rapid spiritual growth. Be ready for opportunities, right?
Beautiful.
And that's what we're talking
Manifestation.
about, right? And
Yeah.
then the right card is Mahatma Energy. Build your light body, accelerate your ascension.
so beautiful. And it's all about
What we're talking
ascension, isn't
about.
it? It's all
Yep.
about manifestation. It's all
Yep.
about the chakras.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
so
love, there's
beautiful.
never any mistakes with the cards. It's always, I love the fact that it's always part of the conversation. So,
Yeah.
Pascal, thank you so much for this conversation. This has been so much fun. I truly have enjoyed this conversation. So thank you for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me here. This really was. It was whatever you want effing to be, right? We talked
Right.
about some effing not great things,
Yep.
and we talked about some really fun things that made us laugh. So
Yes.
thank you for letting me be part of this
I
community.
love that. And for those of you listening, thank you for joining me today on your journey towards a more enlightened and fulfilling life. I really hope that today's episode has inspired you to embrace your inner wisdom and navigate your path with a renewed sense of purpose. Remember, transformation begins from within. Take a moment each day to connect with your higher self and trust that the universe is guiding you towards your highest good. If you found today's episode valuable, please download it, subscribe, leave a review, share it, do all the things. Your support really helps us to reach more souls on their spiritual journey. Stay connected with our community on social media. All of our links will be in the show notes. You can visit my website at foreverchangecoaching.com for any additional resources, upcoming events, and more ways to stay inspired. You can also receive a resource to check out if you are ready for your big ass up level and get some journal prompts to help move you forward. And until next time, continue to shine your light and walk in peace and love. I am Francine Tirrell, and this has been Effin' Fridays with Francine. Pascal, thank you so much.
Mwah.